In previous episode, we saw how Shuba Dutta, a woodcutter, ventured into deep woods, accidentally ends up finding 5 fairies and a magical pitcher, which granted all the food anyone wished by touching it. He stayed with the fairies and his wife and children were concerned about him. The next few days passed away like a dream, and at first Subhadatta thought he had never been so happy in his life. The fairies often went off together, leaving him alone, only coming back to the clearing when they wanted something out of the pitcher. The woodcutter got all kinds of things he fancied for himself, but presently he began to wish he had his wife and children with him to share his wonderful meals. He began to miss them terribly, and he missed his work too. It was no good cutting trees down and chopping up wood when all the food was ready cooked. Sometimes he thought he would slip off home when the fairies were away, but when he looked at the pitcher, he could not bear the thought of leaving it. Soon Subhadatta could not sleep well for thinking of the wife and children he had deserted. Suppose they were hungry when he had plenty to eat. It even came into his head that he might steal the pitcher and take it home with him when the fairies were away. But he had not, after all, the courage to do this, for even when the beautiful girls were not in sight, he had a feeling that they would know if he tried to go off with the pitcher, and that they would be able to punish him in some terrible way. One night he had a dream that troubled him very much. He saw his wife sitting crying bitterly in the little home he used to love, holding the youngest child on her knee, whilst the other one stood beside her looking at her very, very sadly. He started up from the ground on which he lay, determined to go home at once. But at a little distance off he saw the fairies dancing in the moonlight, and somehow he felt again he could not leave them and the pitcher. The next day, however, he was so miserable that the fairies noticed it, and one of them said to him, "Whatever is the matter? We don't care to keep unhappy people here. If you can't enjoy life as we do, you had better go home." The fairies saw he was really in earnest this time, so they consented to let him go, but they were kind-hearted people and felt they ought to pay him in some way for all he had done for them. They consulted together, and then one of them told him they wished to make him a present before he went away, and they would give him whatever he asked for. Directly the woodcutter heard he could have anything he asked for, he cried, "I will have the magic pitcher." You can just imagine what a shock this was to the fairies. You know, of course, that fairies always keep their word. If they could not persuade Subhadatta to choose something else, they would have to give him their beloved, their precious pitcher, and would have to seek their food for themselves. They all tried all they could to persuade the woodcutter to choose something else. They took him to their own secret treasure house, in an old tree with a hollow trunk, even the entrance to which no mortal had ever been allowed to see. The woodcutter found himself in a lofty hall, with an opening in the roof through which the light came. Piled up on the floor were sparkling stones, worth a great deal of gold and silver money, and on the walls hung beautiful robes. Subhadatta was quite dazed with all he saw, but he was only an ignorant woodcutter, and did not realize the value of the jewels and clothes. So when the fairies said to him, "Choose anything you like here, and let us keep our pitcher," he shook his head and said, "No, the pitcher. I will have the pitcher." And at last they had to give it up. "Very well then, take the pitcher," they sadly answered, "and never let us see your face again." The poor fairies began to weep and wring their hands. One of them said, "He was too selfish to think of that. Come, let us forget all about him and go and look for some fruit," said another. So they all left off crying and went away hand in hand. Fairies do not want very much to eat. They can live on fruit and dew, and they never let anything make them sad for long at a time. The selfish woodcutter went his way home taking the magical pitcher. The fairies went into woods with heavy heart of loosing the precious pitcher. We will see what happened next in our concluding chapter. Like, share, and don't forget to subscribe Swan Studios 79 channel for more. Stay tuned.